Thank you so much. It is really great to be here, and thank you for the warm welcome. I have spent a lot of time in Indiana over the last 18 months, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It's one of the privileges I get to do is to travel around the country and take stages and talk about destination management and marketing and destination stewardship. But this is when I say I'm from New York, I know what everybody thought. You said, oh, you know what? I bet he's from the Adirondack region of New York, where we have a 6 million acre park and 46 peaks over 4,000 feet. There are no flamingos here. That's a little side note that I'm going to return to in a minute because I'm bitter about something and I'm going to share it with you. Or you might have thought maybe he's from the Finger Lakes region of New York, which is the third largest wine region in America and rated the #1 wine region by wine enthusiasts last year. We in New York State produce 280 million bottles of wine, in case you were wondering. And also, I know what you're thinking, are there flamingos in the Finger Lakes? No, there are no flamingos in the Finger Lakes. You might have thought about Cooperstown, where the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum is, where the boys of summer played and created America's pastime. We birthed the sport of baseball in central New York. Where I am actually from, I grew up in the lower Hudson Valley. This is the Culinary Institute of America looking over the mighty Hudson River. When people say, is there anywhere to eat in upstate New York? We go, yeah, well, you could go to the Culinary Institute of America. So we have some incredible chefs and some incredible thinkers. We have this little waterfall that's a day's drive from you here at the corner of our state in Niagara Falls. The Maid of the Mist is a fully electric boat experience now. So if you haven't been on the electric Maid of the Mist, you really haven't been on the Maid of the Mist. But this is where I'm actually from. I'm in the northern Catskills. I live in a county the size of Rhode Island with 40,000 people. It is rural. We have 9 U's in the word rural. 53% of our land is forever wild, so it is a place where I see bald eagles and I have trout streams right down from my house. This is not what people think when they think New York. And that is this thing called destination marketing. They don't understand what amazing product we have, what experiences we have, what stories we have, our residents and our mix of attractions and our topography, our unique attractions. They don't understand. And because they don't understand, it has birthed an entire industry called destination marketing. And this industry has really grown up largely over the last 50 years. There's obviously points all through history of inviting people to afar. But really over the last 50 years, this industry of destination marketing has grown. And it is telling people about the experience that they might expect in a place, and then they come and they make memories and life experiences, and then we have all kinds of benefits from that, which I want to unpack because there's a massive shift happening. But my bitterness comes from having just visited the Everglades with my family. This is my daughter. She's 8 years old, and you'll notice she has pink shorts and a pink sweater and a pink shirt. She's not wearing her pink Crocs or her pink hat, but she had it with her, and she has her pink Yeti, and she's standing in front of the Flamingo Lodge, which is all the way at the bottom of the Everglades. We stood on the Flamingo Bay 2 weeks ago. So we went to Flamingo, Florida, which is on the Flamingo Bay, and there's a company called Flamingo Adventures that runs the Flamingo Lodge and the Flamingo Restaurant and the Flamingo Marina, which you would know that's on the Flamingo Canal. What do you think they have none of? We kind of peeked around when we got there, and it was a little chilly to be sure, and we checked into the Flamingo Lodge, and we said, where are the flamingos? And they said, oh, we don't have any flamingos. What made you think that? Your pink building. And they said, oh, we haven't had flamingos in a while. Like, are they like migrating for winter, right? Oh no, we haven't had flamingos since 1902. 123 years. I was like, wait, what? So the next morning we went to the Flamingo Marina, and I got on the catamaran tour by Flamingo Adventures, and the tour guide said to us, you know, some people come here thinking there's flamingos. And I went, hi. I'm going to just call myself right out. That was me. And she said, well, didn't you do any research before you came? I said, no, because I went to Disney earlier this week, and you know what? They had Disney characters. And we went to Gatorland, and you're not going to believe this. They had gators. So when I showed up at the Flamingo Adventures, I said, on your website, you have a chat bot in the lower right corner. It's one of those new AI-driven chat bots. Should I have asked your little flamingo if you had flamingos? So I feel like until they send me a giant stuffed flamingo, I'm going to keep telling this story on stage. Although now I went home and did my research, and in 2025, when they were doing a survey of wild birds from a helicopter, they found a flock of about 125 flamingos that were blown in by a hurricane. And they were blown up from Mexico, and they have decided for now to stay. So technically, we have an opportunity for these flamingos to repopulate the area. So it's an incredible story, actually, of why they disappeared and how that led to the whole preservation and national parks movement down there, and Audubon, and all of these other things. But you can tell I'm still a little bitter. So what I did find here was no flamingos, but when I landed and drove here after a horrible day of flying yesterday and canceled flights and switching cities and all kinds of things, I made it to the Hard Rock Cafe with Phil and a few others for dinner, and it was so amazing. As soon as I hit, the welcome that I felt here, the hospitality and the welcome, the way I was taken care of right from the word go. And that's why I love to go to new places and see these new experiences in different places and different people, because it's about the people, it's about the welcome, it's about the places. Yes, it is also about the ribeye steak. They sling a ribeye steak there that's pretty heroic. I have spent the last 22 years kind of split. I promote the state of New York through a brand called New York's Best Experiences, which is a large 30-destination co-op. But I also have become a speaker and a consultant in destination stewardship. But I've had this nickname for years of the New York Sherpa. You know, how do you get to be known as the New York Sherpa? You have to be born a Sherpa. This is my baby picture. My parents fed me IPAs through a bottle, so I got an early start on a beard. But the Sherpa are the natives of Nepal. They are the people that would carry your stuff up Mount Everest. And they are some of the earliest tourist hosts in the world, inviting people to have that type of adventure. But it was not just that they carried your stuff, they warmly welcomed you, they made you their family while they were there. So a Sherpa today is kind of known as a tourism expert, or maybe somebody who helps you gain a higher elevation, and that's what I hope to do. This year I'll hit 1 million miles driven across America. I have 47 states down, I have 3 to go. So it has been quite an adventure. And then last year, I spent a lot of time in northern Indiana with Phil and Christine and others, Jack and Laporte, with the Northern Indiana Tourism Development Corporation, doing an assessment along the toll road, the Indiana toll road. So I was able to hit, at some point, all 9 of those counties and kind of do a destination assessment of this region, and really fell in love with so much of the product that is across this whole corridor that people travel. So it was a really enjoyable project to work together and continue this year to build strongly a story of northern Indiana. But what I want to talk about here for not too long is this idea of how our industry is transitioning from this concept of destination marketing to destination stewardship. This is a radical shift that is happening, not because we've decided to make a shift, it's because the industry, the tourism industry and the visitor economy is going through a monumental shift right now. And it's a generational shift that you have the opportunity to get ahead of, and you are. I'm very, very pleased to see how Phil and Christine and the ones that I've been working with are thinking in a different way about how we're promoting our destinations. And it's how we're transitioning from destination marketing to destination stewardship. And so I'm going to unpack that a little. This is the most finite resource of the future, young people. The most finite resource of the future will be where young people choose to live and invest and grow families and grow their careers. And yes, I am a millennial, and I look at this photo and I say, yeah, that's pretty typical. Everybody's got their head down in a phone, right? Don't you miss the good old days when you could smoke on a train? Anyway, Young people, this is who we have to watch, because the future of everything that we have in our communities, as it is tied to vitality, and our future of our communities will be tied to young people. So let's talk about young people for a minute, because a generational shift happened with the millennial generation. The millennials lived a very unique life. And it began when I'm right on the edge of Gen X and millennial. I'm about 72% millennial, according to the Facebook survey I took. But yes, my life pivoted dramatically on that day in September, all those years ago when the world stopped turning. 9/11 was a massive emotional switching point for the millennial generation, because yes, it introduced fear and terror and war and uncertainty, but it also caused us to notice something out of the norm. What I had been taught as a kid, the mantra that I had been taught as a kid, was this idea that you do as well as you can in high school, and you go as far as you can in college, and then you get a job, and you put your head down and you work. And you work and you work and you work. And you work for seniority, and you work for benefits, and you work for retirement, but you build yourself into a company. And you commit yourself to that company, and that company will commit themselves to you. And then when you retire, what was always talked about retirement? You can go see the world. You can be free. You can experience. And so I would watch these retirees travel. And it wasn't that we didn't travel during those years of building into a company. We took that 1 or 2 weeks a year vacation, and we would go to the shore or to the woods. We'd go camping, or we'd go to Orlando. But really, the tourism industry had been built into those pillars. It had been built into a pillar of, like the family trip and then the retiree trip. Those were the two primary pillars of the tourism industry for generations. And that was that idea. So during 9/11, the whole generation, that time that followed, we watched this American dream take a dent of, go to college, get a job, buy a house, get 2 cars, have 2.3 kids. We started to see that get dented a little bit, because those houses, the economy got hit and the house values went down, and people started to fall to the bottom of balance sheets. We saw people being laid off from their companies, starting to be traded for financial prosperity of the company instead of financial prosperity of the worker. Some of these things started to be introduced to us, and we noticed aunts and uncles, moms and dads starting to be laid off, starting to lose that job, starting to worry about their retirement. But it wasn't until, really 7 years later, because what everybody told us is this is a once-in-a-generation experience. This isn't going to happen again. This was this massive upheaval. 7 years later, as this generation is coming out of college heavily now, it happens again, but 10 times worse. The Great Recession that hit Wall Street, 10 times the amount of companies went out of business. Houses collapsed. Everyone's house went underwater. People couldn't afford the college payment or the cars. Suddenly, the whole equation was upside down, and we watched people falling to the bottom of balance sheets, yes, but we also watched entire retirement accounts vaporize. Do you remember that? When fraud collapsed entire retirement accounts. And so a whole generation took a step back and said, wait, I'm not going to invest myself the way all these other generations have in this mantra I've been taught. I'm going to go travel now. I'm going to go live now. I'm going to do it now, because I'm not sure these promises that have been made are right. And so that's what they did. The millennial generation started traveling more than any generation in history between 18 and 28. No generation between 18 and 28 years old had ever traveled 4 to 5 times a year. But there was 3 major shifts in how their lives began to change based on their travel. And these became generational shifts that now have become normative today, and it's how we're going to manage into the future. Shift number 1 was that they traveled more. But that we kind of know because they up-leveled Gen X and even younger baby boomers into traveling more. And now Gen Z just thinks it's normal to take 4 to 5 trips a year. You know what the number 1 question on a job interview is? How much vacation time do I get? So it's now considered normal, so we know that one. But the second shift is just as interesting because the type of things they traveled to were different. They didn't travel to these big tourism hubs of family and retiree traditional tourism hubs like a Paris and an Orlando. They went off the beaten path to hiking trails and small towns. They shared rooms in this new company called Airbnb in little towns and off the beaten trails. They went to places with dog parks and hiking trails and biking trails and wilderness and wild and stories and craft beverages. We think that they were searching for their food of their gods, this special ambrosia they were crawling the planet for, called avocado toast. And they'd pay $14 a slice for it. And to this day, I do, in my destination assessments, an avocado toast index. Because if I count the amount of avocado toast places in your destination, I already know something about your economic development numbers, your youth retention numbers, and your youth investment numbers. Because it was the eclectic, the story, the local, the genuine that they were chasing. The third shift is the most interesting and the most important. The millennial generation started a trend that is now a part of the ethos of how young people think. They want to live in a place that they want to visit, and then they will find work. This is a massive shift. If you do not have a place that a young person wants to visit, you do not have a place that a young person wants to live. That's the challenge. But the inverse is the opportunity. If you have a place that young people like to visit, you have a place that young people like to live. That's an incredible opportunity because now it means that this idea of destination marketing is pushing more levers. It used to be market the place people come and visit. But now we're finding that when you market a place, you are now becoming a steward of so many more levers than you were even 20 years ago or 15 years ago, because the game has changed. Where people used to chase smokestacks, people used to follow work, now companies are waking up to the fact that younger demographics are starting to live where they love to live, and companies have to chase quality of place because that is workforce stability. So some companies are locating where they find high quality of place, and some destinations are saying, well, if that's the strategy, we're going to leverage the visitor economy as the financier of how we build quality of place to stabilize our workforce, which will stabilize our companies. It's a different responsibility, and it caused us to look at our job differently. In the tourism industry, we've always looked at our customer as the visitor. But when we sat down about 10 years ago at the Destinations International, the international association, I sit on the advocacy committee, when we sat down and looked at, wait a minute, what do we really do? Your customer is the person that gets the benefit from what you do. So what do we do? This is what we do. We champion, tourists are coming, tourists are coming. Like your favorite resident, Leslie Knope, who's always so happy, always so chipper, tourists are coming. That's what we've done. And our residents have started to be more like, is that really great that visitation is up? And so we come back to the residents. About 20 years ago, we came up with this terrible strategy of coming back to the residents with all these economic numbers and saying, oh, I know you don't have a degree in economics, but I'm about to tell you all these numbers and millions and billions and tell you how important visitation is here economically, which it is. I'm mocking the numbers a little bit, but trust me, those economics are important. So we said, look at all the money we save you on your taxes. And our residents said, I still don't care. Because the residents didn't realize that we were becoming a visitor economy first culture. In New York State, the visitor economy has gone from 7th to 6th to 5th to 4th to 3rd to now the second largest industry in New York State is the visitor economy. In every community, and I could put you on a bus and take you to 100 communities, in every community where they are thriving and young people are growing investments and families and building their lives out, the genesis of it was the visitor economy over the last 20 years. So this is what we have to basically enter into is a conversation. If you know the arc of Parks and Recs, I love that show, you have two people who thought they were very different, but then they found that actually their values were the same. And that's the story that we're telling residents, is that the visitor economy and residents can work in harmony because our values are the same. This is what the tourism industry brings to a destination: pride of place, employment, youth employment. We train America's workforce. It brings small business success, those Main Street successes. It brings beautification and pride of place. And yes, it brings a lot of income that we're able to leverage into paving roads and fixing infrastructure. It brings a tremendous amount of income. So that's resident first thinking. I'm just going to check on my time here because I could talk forever. But I want to quickly take you through, if the resident is our stakeholder, if the resident actually is our customer, then what do we want residents to know about the visitor economy? We want them to know these four things. Number one, visitors are investors. When they come and they leave their money, it changes a place. And you're going to be familiar with this town. See, Phil leads a convention and visitors bureau. Sometimes we call them a DMO, a destination marketing organization. But destination marketing organization number one came in 1890 from Detroit. Because Detroit had the burgeoning automobile industry, of course, but they didn't have investors. And a group of people got together in a hotel that I actually had the pleasure of speaking at last year. And they got together at this hotel and said, we should form a campaign to get people to come and visit, because if they visit, they're just going to look around and see opportunities to invest. And not just visitors on leisure, but business conferences and conventions, that when you bring someone in for a conference or convention, they're going to look around and see what else is happening here. And that's exactly what happened. It was so successful that it launched a whole new concept called destination marketing. And what we find is that when somebody comes in and spends $1 on a hotel room, 50 cents of that ends up in a payroll check. And I could give you all the other math, which I won't bore you with now, but it increases local taxes, it increases development, it increases the livability and the likability of the destination. So now what we're actually starting to talk about is something called economic development, which I'm probably 50 slides ahead with how many times I've clicked this. Economic development. And we have a general sense, some of you are experts in this here, but most of you probably have a general sense of what economic development means. And we've started saying that in the tourism industry, is that, well, we're really in economic development. And people go, well, we really don't know what that means. And so I had an economic developer come up to me and say, like, are you like making tax savings programs for companies that come in? Are you helping companies expand? Are you remediating brownfields? And I was like, oh no, none of that. Well, what does it mean that we're in economic development? We sit in this second lane of economic development. And what that means is this, that the economic development, even on their posters, they will say work, live, play for quality of life. That's the promise of economic development. Work, live, play. And it actually was a massive post-World War II strategy. If you brought work, you brought live. By bringing companies, you brought people. And by bringing people, you stabilized communities, and then they created downtowns and restaurants and water parks and all kinds of non-for-profit theaters and events. So if you brought work, it brought people, and people brought a place, what we call play, quality of life. And so that was a strategy that worked for years, and it is still a very important strategy. But if you think about the beginning of how I started, the inverse of this is now becoming just as important of a strategy, the play, live, work strategy. What we are finding all over the country and world is that when people visit a place, a certain amount of them who are similar in values to the destination will say, I could see myself living here, because something in the mix of what made them visit is now enticing them to want to live. It was proximate to a city, and there's beaches, and there's places to walk and bike and run dogs, but it's a quieter place. It's a quieter way of life. It's Midwest living, but I have access to so much. I want to live in a place that's a little more spread out, a little cleaner air, a little cleaner water. I don't know if I want to live in Brooklyn, Austin, or Portland anymore. The idea is that when you bring in a visitor by celebrating an attraction, the visitor starts to say, I might see myself living there, and then they consider themselves working there, and we're watching this work as an economic development strategy all over the place. That's why we call it the second lane of economic development. And it produces the same things that the economic development output is. And we need it for the workforce. So this is what we look at. You need an economic development initiative. You need an industrial development initiative. And you need tourism, marketing, and management. Because of that thesis that if it's not a place a young person wants to visit, it's not a place a young person wants to live. It's down to quality of place. In my town, in an incredibly rural place, 5 businesses are what make the difference for me. 5 businesses. Well, you have 2 brothers from Brooklyn running a little cafe that makes local steaks and brings in seafoods and has an oyster night in the middle of nowhere, an oyster night. We have a sourdough bakery. We've got 2 places serving coffee and avocado toast. And those 5 businesses allow me to live a really great life because I live in the middle of nowhere, and that's an experience. But then I can pop into town and get a proper cocktail and a locally raised ribeye. Oyster night's Monday night. It's an incredible trade-off for me to have urban assets in a more rural place. The third thing that I'll just touch on briefly is that marketing and management of visitor economy is a particular set of skills. Like our friend Liam Neeson says, I have a very particular set of skills. Really? Your kids have been kidnapped 3 times, buddy. Really? They're making Taken 4. I don't know if his kids know that yet. They're making Taken 4. But is it a travel guide and a website? Is that what a destination marketing organization does? Well, yes, and a lot more. Is it just a niche way to grow these taxes? Well, yes, and a lot more. It's a whole set of skills. And I give a whole hour just on this set of skills. I won't do that to you this morning. But the first one and the most important is that someone is lifting up a brand for you. Virginia is for what happens in Vegas? No, it ends up on Facebook now. That's their new tagline. Some people in this room have heard me tell this joke 10 times, and I thank you for still chuckling. There's 7 buckets of how we win visitors here. Only one of them is consumer. Those all have to be managed and marketed and sold. But the last thing I want to talk about as I land this plane is this idea of somebody doing the destination development and becoming a conductor of opportunities, because destination stewardship, point number 4 that I want every resident to know is that destination stewardship is a new idea of an old technique. It's building quality of life through managing a work-live-play balance. That's what destination stewardship is. And destination stewardship is defined by when you create a resident win first. It's a win-win-win. The resident win has to be first. Our number one customer, our number one stakeholder is the resident. Because if you have a place that people love to live, you have a place that people love to visit. Our tour guide on that catamaran said, there is no greater place in the world than the flamingo-less Flamingo Bay. And I was like, okay. But she loved it there, and her passion made me love it a little more through my anger and my crying 8-year-old daughter dressed all in pink. She was okay. We got her a flamingo souvenir from their shop full of flamingo souvenirs. But she loved it so much. When you create a place that residents love, you're by nature creating a place visitors want to be. So a destination stewardship campaign is the idea that you're creating a visitor win first. A resident win first. And then the next goal is to make sure it's a visitor win. And the third goal is to make sure it enhances your brand. That's what destination stewardship is. Resident win, visitor win, brand win. When something happens in that way, you're building a destination that has longevity for those elusive young people and where they're going to live, because they're not going to blow in on a hurricane like the 125 flamingos that are supposedly in the Everglades. I think I'm still a little bitter, I think I'm still a little bitter. The Blue Ridge of Georgia had this problem and this opportunity. The destination marketing organization down there, who formerly was seen as people who just promote for tourism, come to Georgia's Blue Ridge. They noticed that in their destination stewardship, they needed to have a loving local campaign. It was a campaign to think about how we get the locals to love it more by solving their problems first and teaching them that visitors do have to be managed. There's high seasons and low seasons, but that they are essential to our quality of life. So they launched this campaign, Loving Local, and the first thing that they found was that the iconic fireflies in the region were in decline, rapidly in decline. Now, who else's eyes were going to be on this problem? And as a destination marketing organization, they started researching, why are the fireflies declining? And what they found was that, you know how when the turtles hatch on the beach, everybody says, shut off your porch light because they hatch on a full moon and the turtles head to the ocean and you don't want them to head towards the porch. If anyone's lived in a coastal community, that's what happens in turtle hatching season. Turn off your back porch light so that the turtles head toward the moon. The same thing was happening with the fireflies. You see, the fireflies are loved by the residents and they're loved by the visitors, and it's a big part of their brand. Oh, we just talked about destination stewardship's equation here. And they're in decline. So when they researched it, they found that all these new cabins and all these new in-the-woods homes had a lot more visitors, and they were leaving their porch lights on. And as the fireflies the blinking is a mating ritual, and they're seeing this giant light on the porch, and the little firefly bros are going, ooh. And the porch lights were causing a decline in the fireflies, so they lifted up a campaign to residents and to visitors, turn your porch lights off. And the campaign was Lights Off, Fireflies On. And it went to short-term rentals and hotels, and it went to residents, and it went to civic groups, and the firefly population started to come back. And then they were able to advocate for themselves by inviting all the local leaders and showing them how destination marketing, being reframed as destination stewardship, had actually done something no one else was solving. No one else was solving for this triple win. This is the idea behind, Phil and Christine have introduced me to this idea of sand and steel, of this idea of acknowledging what is here and what has been a resident reality, what has been a cultural and a regional legacy of steel, but then what is also a growing reality of the quality of life behind the sand and the visitor interest in the sand. And how do we play on this? And how do we build a brand around this? How do we use this as a mechanism to solve unique problems and to hear challenges from the community and to bring visitors some cultural appreciation? So this will take shape, I understand, as placemaking and branding and campaigns as a way to frame the region through the lens of we care about our residents, we care about our visitors, and we care about our brands. I'm new to this concept. I'm very curious to see and excited to see how this devolves and develops. But when you see that, think destination stewardship. That's the idea of what's unfolding. So this is my LinkedIn. I think that's my time. I've got to get off of this stage and whine to somebody else about flamingos. But if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, this is my LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer questions. But I just want to encourage you as we come into visitor season and as you see that campaigns are being lifted up to win visitors to the destination, I would encourage you to realize that those visitors might become your next residents. Those visitors might be fueling the type of businesses you love most here. Those visitors might actually be the catalyst for how communities become more vibrant as we are slowly bleeding populations out of urban centers and they're looking for more meaningful and connected places to live. You are positioned perfectly for that evolution. And I'd ask you to just do me one favor, and that is to turn off your back porch light, because we really do need more of them. Thank you all for having me here.
Thank you, Josiah. I think you could see why I was so passionate about getting him here to speak to us. Before I forget this, because I forgot right when we started, I want to thank NIPSCO. They sponsored this event. We couldn't have the breakfast and have everybody here and have people like Josiah here if they didn't do that. And I also wanted to thank the people that did the video. I know Jim Tailski's here, and Nina and John were part of that, and I want to thank them very much for that as well. But we're going to have some time to ask some questions of Josiah. I think one thing I want to mention from his presentation, in Indiana, we have a lot of things that we're very proud of. I think we talk about a lot of our assets and the things that we're doing very well in the state of Indiana, and we should be, right? We're doing a lot of great things. But I was in Indianapolis about 2 months ago, and the Indiana Chamber gave their, what I think they call it the progress report. And one statistic that stuck out to me was that Indiana is number 47 in the country right now of retaining our college graduates with bachelor's degrees. It ties into very specifically what he's talking about. I think some people think it's tourism. It's fun if people come in, they spend some money. It's, this is great. It's good for hotels and innkeeper tax, helps the DMO. But if we're not building a quality of place that's going to keep our children and our grandchildren here and have other people from out the country moving here, it's the old adage that at the end of the day, just the last person in, turn off the light. We've got to focus on how do we get the younger generation to want to live here, because that's going to tie into everything that Josiah just talked about. Who has questions for Josiah or any? Yes, sir. Coming over.
Great presentation. So you're suggesting we should get flamingos in Hammond?
Yes.
Okay,
100%.
I got that. I'm a transplant. I moved to Hammond several years ago from Illinois. I was completely Illinoised and moved over. And 5 kids, and exactly what Phil was saying, a great segue. There's just a brain drain going on with our youth. And Hammond in particular is going through a revitalization. I've been doing community development for 35 years. And I think it's going to attract all the cool kids. We're in a spot now where we have all the amenities. We have the building stock. It's a better quality of life. I didn't move here because of the taxes. I moved here for the community. And I'm not sure how to get that word out to everybody. The quality of life here is off the charts. The people are down to earth. The taxes are actually 8th on my list. We support our police, the community events. How do we get that out to keep? We've got Purdue Northwest. As soon as they graduate, they leave. And we need to keep them here. We have the amenities, but there's almost an inferiority complex in Northwest Indiana. How do we get over that hump?
So yeah, that is the question. Thank you for that question, because that's a great question. And there's just a quick little seed of my story I want to let you know. Delhi is in the northern Catskill Mountains, and that's this incredibly rural place that I live in. That's where my parents went to college. They met at college, and from there they ended up moving just beyond a couple miles from the college and started their life there. After about 8 years, it just didn't have what they thought it should have, and they moved further south, closer to the city where there was more opportunities. What changed for me is that I had a desire. I spent a lot of my summers there because of their connection to it. And so I was that grow up, go to college, go see the world. But then when I decided that I wanted to go back to somewhere that was connected to family or connected to friends, had a more slow pace of life, a place I could open the back door and let the kids run out the back door type of life, I ended up going right back to kind of the roots of where my story had begun as a kid. That's something I think a lot of people are worried about, the kids going to college and going out. But that's very normal for that age demographic, and you don't want to really push against that idea of I get educated and I go see the world. A lot of kids right now think, we visited Disney in Orlando as a kid, and I just graduated, and I'm going to go live around Orlando. And they head off to Florida, because Florida is the greatest state in the world. And then you live in Florida, outside of Orlando for 3 years. They're seeing this massively right now, and they go, oh, they don't have 4 seasons, and it's 130 degrees in the summer, fish swim by in the air. I want to go back to something real. What has to be happening is in the tourism promotion, and you're kind of seeing this with Sand and Steel, even though that's like a top-level brand, the strategy below it will become pride of place and branding. It becomes a reminder of what we have. We have Four Seasons. We have access to major cities. We have the lake. We have dog parks and things. When they start to feel like, I want to come home, we have to make sure that there's some third places, some cafes serving espresso and avocado toast, a couple of cocktail bars that serve proper cocktails, a couple of places that have music from 9 to midnight, somebody playing a guitar in the corner, some speakeasies, some parks, some events, some culture, some murals. This is the work of a Convention and Visitors Bureau now. This idea of destination stewardship is that they are marketing our stories and our places, but all through this eye of we have to show what is special, because as we infuse those businesses with cash and investment from the visitors, they'll expand. I want to open up for more questions, but I was in Mesa, Arizona, and there was a guy who started a couple, it was a gentleman and his wife, started a speakeasy, and then they started a wine bar, and then they started a cronut, the croissant donut shop, and then they started a steakhouse, and they just kept developing places that young people wanted to be, and wouldn't you know it, Mesa's young population is exploding. So it really comes down to, you have a department here that is telling the story, that is listening to the businesses, that is trying to invite people into these experiences, so that as this generational wave is hitting the country of, maybe I should go closer to home, maybe I should move back. I moved to the Western Desert and it's just an arid desert, or I moved to Florida and there's no flamingos, and they want to come back. We need to have a place that they come back to, and that's why I think destination marketing and management is one of the linchpins to economic development success right now.
Well, I heard you mention third place, and so I work at the Crossroads YMCA, and I'll do a humble brag on Northwest Indiana. We have the fastest growing YMCA network in the country. Just up the street in Hammond, they've got the single largest Y in the country. It's a great third place for families to have quality of life. It's just one of the many things. So I do think we have a lot of momentum in Northwest Indiana. But my question is very simple. You're going to hit 1 million miles this year. How many vehicles did it take, and do you remember them?
Oh, yeah. A Volvo 240, a Honda Accord, a Honda Civic, and then I got into GMC Sierras because I wrap a big vehicle for our for the New York's Best Experiences. We go to major events and set up a New York visitor center all over. So I went GMC Sierra, GMC Diesel Canyon, GMC Sierra again, and then 2 Expeditions. So that's the actual answer. Yeah, and I grew up going to the Y. My mom lifeguarded at the Y. Grew up doing swimming lessons there, and now belong to the local Y with my family, and that's my gym. Very much a believer in how the Y plays a very important role in our communities.
Well, the specific one Matt's talking about in Hammond, it used to be the old Woodmar Mall, which is where a lot of us went as we were growing up. We used to shop there, and there was entertainment and things of that nature. So when the mall was shutting down, it was on the city, basically, to, hey, how can you repurpose this but still make it a community gathering space? Wow. And, Mayor McDermott and his team, and there's people in this room that had a lot to do with it, created, not only got the YMCA to build the largest YMCA in the country, they built one of the largest sportsplexes in the country. It's now hosting some of the largest collegiate tournaments in the Midwest, and it's become this huge tourism draw. And now, of course, you're starting to see restaurateurs looking at opportunities around that area. And it has to do with the Y and the sportsplex and leadership. So just wanted to mention that. Josiah, you said 47 states.
Yeah.
So let's say the last 3, since everybody's going to be losing sleep over this.
Yeah, Louisiana, Alaska, and Hawaii. Which everybody's always surprised at Louisiana. But I've had two. I was supposed to speak at a conference there that got canceled for COVID, and then I was supposed to go back 2 years later, and that got canceled for some other reason. So I have a whole list of, New Orleans and Baton Rouge and all these places that are on my bucket list. But Louisiana, Alaska, and Hawaii. And unfortunately, I haven't tracked my miles closely enough to know when I hit that 1,000,000 miles. So when you see me on Instagram drive and hit a mile that is my 1,000,000th mile, it is a flat-out PR lie. I'm just going to fake it because I know at some point this year it's going to happen. So thank you so much for having me here. You'll see me back. I've really fallen in love with so much of the story here. I travel with a travel trailer with my family. We have a 30-foot travel trailer that we haul around America. So we have a plan to make a trip all the way across this region and experience a lot of what you have here, from Notre Dame to the Amish country to the beaches to the entertainment here and the experiences here. I know I'm definitely going back to the Hard Rock for a bone-in ribeye. That's a for sure. But I've really appreciated my time here and the relationships that I've built here with Phil and Christine and the rest of the people across northern Indiana. So thank you for having me, and happy to answer any questions online as I throttle off around America. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Josiah. Appreciate it. Thank you, Christine Livingston, for being a part of this and introducing. Everybody, our next event will be next quarter. Please watch for it. It is an invite only. We try and invite people that really could get value and benefit from understanding what tourism is all about and the advocacy component of it. The one thing we need your help with, because I think when we tell the story, everybody's like, well, you're biased. You're the DMO. Of course you're going to say that. But if, as the more we can get our community leaders, our elected officials, our legislators to understand the importance of tourism, what it does for the region, obviously the better it is for everything that Josiah just explained. So we look forward to seeing you next quarter. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to us. And thank you again, Josiah. Thank you.